We're coming together under God.
Yeah.
Right? And so they did sell things, but it was the extra things. You want a new outfit, you want a new goat, you need, I don't know.
Who doesn't need a new goat?
You need a new towel because you just, went in the Siloam. But the basic was you're invited, you're here. And there was a miracle that happened that no one ever complained that there wasn't enough space in Jerusalem.
What I love about Jerusalem is that it's a city where everyone believes in God. They believe in one God.
Yeah.
But they debate what is the nature of that God like? So the Muslims see Allah as God, and the Jewish people see the God of Israel, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. But with Christianity, we believe in the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, but we see him expressed in his son.
This has been such an incredible trip so far. I have loved every moment. Thinking of walking the ancient streets of the old city of Jerusalem with Mati, and of course being with Rania in Magdala, walking up the Mount of Beatitudes with him, and then being on the Sea of Galilee in that lovely little boat with Joshua. And today, I'm going to be meeting Franny, and we're going to be looking at where they've recently been excavating the Pool of Siloam. I know she's going to have many stories to tell us. Hey, Franny!
Hey, Sheila, welcome.
Thanks for meeting me here.
I'm so excited to show you some amazing things.
I have heard that you have so much knowledge of this area. So my first question is, where are we? But hey.
Hi.
Hey.
Welcome to the city of David.
Wow.
This is the ancient city of Jerusalem. If you want to understand what Jerusalem really is, you have to kind of peel away all the layers and go back to the beginning where it started. Here on this small little hilltop, just south of the Temple Mount, south of the Old City, this is ancient Jerusalem, the ancient city of David. And I want to show you what that looks like.
Yes.
Okay, so right now we are standing right down here.
Okay.
Right at the bottom of this little hill, right? There's a valley on this side. This is the Kidron Valley. Very famous valley where David runs away, right?
Yeah.
Big stuff happening, the Mount of Olives. We have another valley down here. We're gonna walk up this. And in between these two valleys is the ancient city of David. This spot, right outside the old city, was covered in fields.
Wow.
Total fields, right? Everything. The steps that we're about to walk up, totally covered in fields. No one knew this was here. People would have said, oh, Sheila, you want to go see ancient Jerusalem? Go up to the old city, go up to the Temple Mount, go up to the Western Wall, go to the Garden Tomb, right? Go up there. That's where ancient biblical Jerusalem was. And it was because all of this just lied, waiting patiently, almost like the lost city of Atlantis.
Gives me chills.
Right? And then, quite by mistake, right? A man by the name of Captain Charles Warren, he's sent by Queen Victoria in 1867. She says, I want you to go dig on the Temple Mount, right? Find remnants of biblical temples. And he can't, because the Temple Mount is totally closed off. And he goes down to the main source of water. He ends up finding a whole system of tunnels, and he uncovers that ancient Jerusalem is here.
Oh my gosh.
Quite the same way, by the way, that David originally enters the city, when he has to attack, right? The last part that's left. And he gets there with all of his men. He's the one that's crowned. People know him, and they say, we're gonna go to Jerusalem. We're gonna create the first capital of the people. And that's what this place is going to be, and it's gonna be significant thereon, right? Because if you look at this city is impossible to conquer.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's high up.
It's high up.
It's surrounded by walls.
Surrounded by walls. The only source of water is totally surrounded. This is the only place in the world where you can see 150-foot remnants of a Canaanite fortress.
Wow.
And he stands down here, and the king of the Jebusite city looks down and he says, you can't come here unless you go through the blind and the lame.
Wow.
Meaning I could put blind and lame people on my walls. I know what you're thinking. You're going ahead, right? We're gonna get, I know I can read you.
Exciting.
Right? Mm-hmm. And David says, anyone who can infiltrate the water system, climb up a tunnel behind the enemy lines, open up the city, he's gonna do that. And that's what happens is Joab, he's gonna climb up this tunnel underneath the city, open up the gates, Jerusalem is born. History's changed forever. And it's the same way that thousands of years later, Captain Charles Warren is hiking up a random tunnel in the middle of fields, and he discovers ancient Jerusalem. There's something that's connective here.
Wow. It's pretty exciting to be here while actual excavation is going on. What is this site in particular?
Yes, so this site brings us to actually another incredible story that happened by chance. If you would have come here before 2004, there was a road here and there was a big garden. I kind of showed you a picture of it, right? We're standing right here, all of these trees. And what happened was there was a snowstorm and a pipe exploded. And they said, all right, we got to fix the road. They bring in some excavators and they bring in an archaeologist. He says, wait a second, I got to make sure there's nothing, old here, important.
Yeah.
And they hear scraping. And he says, there's something here, we got to dig. And he starts digging and he finds these steps. You see these? 1, 2, 3, 5 steps, and then a larger step. And then 5 more steps down here. And then he finds a corner. Do you see the corner right behind you?
Yeah.
So once he finds that corner, he says, wait a second, I have uncovered the most incredible discovery of my career, right? The Pool of Siloam, the ancient Siloam pool. Now this pool originally was built by Hezekiah to save the city from the Assyrians. Later it was renovated by Herod, and we have a pool that is about the size of 2 Olympic pools put together. This is the most important site 2,000 years ago in Jerusalem. If you were coming then, and I was your guide, we would definitely start here. And what would we do? We would immerse in this ritual bath.
Wow.
Because in order to go up to the temple, you'd have to be holy.
Purification.
Yes, so this would be the purification center 3 times a year. Thousands of people from all over the country are going to come here in Passover, Pentecost, Tabernacles. They're going to immerse in this pool and they're going to experience the most spiritual moments of their lives. Now, what you're seeing behind us is really new. We finally have been able to start excavating the pool in its entirety. So really, you're seeing history kind of being uncovered, not unfolding because it's here, it's waiting for us, but it's being uncovered again for our eyes to see.
You know what's amazing to me, Franny, is that I've had the privilege of going to so many different spots. And in many of them, it's like, well, Jesus could have walked here because that was my heart. I want to walk in the footsteps of Jesus. This is one place where I can say 100% without a shadow of a doubt, Jesus was here.
Yes, this site, 100%. If you were Jewish 2,000 years ago and you were in Jerusalem, you were definitely on these steps and about to walk up where we are going to walk up now, because it didn't just start at the pool. And we have this, the famous stories of the Siloam pool, which I'm sure are like,
oh gosh, yeah, in John's Gospel.
Right? Or sitting in your head.
Yeah, the blind man, where Jesus spits on mud and puts it on his eyes and then tells him to go wash in this pool.
Go wash in this pool. This is that pool. And what we're going to do now is something that really, for thousands of years, has not been something you could do. Today, you can stand here at the Pool of Siloam, and together we can actually continue walking, because the story didn't end when he finds this pool. He continues digging. And he finds a tunnel. And in that tunnel, he's like, what is this thing, right? He's digging and digging and digging, and the tunnel's going all the way up. And he uncovers something quite spectacular, and it's going to be groundbreaking. He uncovers the ancient pilgrimage road. So meaning people started at the pool, but their goal was the temple, right? They started here, and this was their journey that they were going to take. And I would say, if there's anything that is amazing to do in Israel, this is probably number 1. So we're starting here and we're gonna do our own pilgrimage.
Oh gosh, Franny, lead on.
So you can see here, we have, kind of an expanded version of the picture that I showed you. Pool of Siloam, and we have this beautiful road. Now, it's not like a road of today, right? We're talking about, it's massive, like a highway, but for people, right? 12, 13 yards wide. You're actually standing on that right now. And on either side, you have homes ascending all the way up to what would have been the temple. The temple would have stood right where the golden dome is. That is called the Dome of the Rock.
Yeah.
And if you would go in there today, there would be a big rock. That rock is the foundation stone. The place where Abraham does the binding of Isaac.
Oh, wow.
The place where Jacob dreams with the ladders, right? The place where the first Holy of Holies stood in the first temple, and in the second temple, the second Holy of Holies. And so we're talking about, that's the goal. That's the end goal of this ascent.
It makes so much sense of the Psalms that say, let us go up
Yes.
to the house of the Lord.
Yes.
I've noticed that a lot and never really quite understood what that would look like for people.
So I think that it's interesting that you bring that up, because when you think of that, let us go up.
Yeah.
This path is called in Hebrew, derech ole regel, which means the path of going up by foot. Now, before we uncover this, what would you think? Like, why is it called going up? Is Jerusalem really the highest place?
No.
No, physically it's not. So why is it called going up? It's a spiritual ascent.
Wow,
You're
I love
spiritually going up, and that's what we thought. But I have to show you the road, because you're gonna feel it's not just spiritual, we are really going up to Mount Moriah.
Wow.
So come this way. So here we've redone it a little bit, right? But this is an entryway to what would have been a home and a shop, right?
Wow.
People lived on the road, and you have hundreds of thousands of people. It could go for millions, right? It's like, imagine every year this city has to get ready for the Olympics. Okay,
Yeah.
people are coming, and the people are coming from all over. Maybe they need food. Maybe they need a new goat because they need a sacrifice and their goat got blemished on the way. Maybe they want a new dress. This became not only a spiritual site, but tourists. So in Jewish law, it's interesting to see that people who live in Jerusalem, they had law, Jewish law, that they had to accept the pilgrims and give them for free a place to sleep and basic food and drink.
Wow.
Meaning you had to reach out to the other. You had to reach out to your brothers that come from far, whatever political side you're on, whatever religious side you're on, you had to bring them in. These are the foundations of, I would say, the Judeo-Christian, values that even America was built on, right? And this starts here. So what were they selling?
We need to get back to that.
Yes.
That is
yes.
powerful.
Yes.
Where it's about the other.
It's about the other. We're coming together under God.
Yeah.
Right? And so they did sell things, but it was the extra things. You want a new outfit. You want a new goat. You need, I don't know.
Who doesn't need a new
You need
goat?
a new towel because you just, went in the Siloam. But the basic was you're invited. You're here. And there was a miracle that happened that no one ever complained that there wasn't enough space in Jerusalem.
Wow.
Yeah. So with this.
So much to learn here.
Yeah. We're not going to buy anything this time.
No.
We're going to go on our own spiritual journey and we're going to walk up the steps. And these steps, this is our way. So we're walking on the original steps. I want you to notice that there's a break in the road. There's a drainage tunnel that runs under the road. And there are these two full pots that were clearly brought into the drainage tunnel for whatever purpose. We'll talk about it at the end. But notice that there are breaks.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about them, but let's focus on the steps. Right now we are ascending. We are starting our own
And
Song of
these
Ascent.
are the original
Original.
steps.
Nothing has been changed here.
Gosh.
And look how beautiful they're preserved, right? Like thousands of years later. And the reason they're preserved is because they literally stood underground for so long.
We've actually been allowed to go behind the scenes of the dig and continue walking up the road to the Temple Mount that is usually closed to the public, but we've been given special access.
So interestingly, another thing is these steps are not even. There are some that are long, some that are short. You'll see that in a minute there's like random ones. And the reason is that you're not supposed to do pilgrimage running.
Oh.
You have to be mindful, thoughtful of every step that we're taking. And I'm gonna tell you, right underneath that bubble, see that light bubble?
Yeah?
You can't see it right now. It means you already have to come back, but there is a coin.
There's a coin?
There's a coin under there. I'm gonna show you a picture of it. So let's take a seat over here, and I want to tell you a story. I want to tell you the story of this space.
I love stories.
Well, this one's full of them, right? We could talk here for a while. But we're sitting right in the middle of this pilgrimage road, right? We started at the Pool of Siloam, and we're on our way up. And the story here is one of unity, right? Of bringing people from all over the world together through, community and through spirituality and Jerusalem.
Yeah.
Imagine we were sitting here 2,000 years ago and you would see people coming up and you would hear songs and music and dancing, and it would be really the most spiritual time of their lives, right? This would be a place where if we took a break, right, and we would sit, you would think, what am I doing here, right? What's the purpose of me coming here? And it really is kind of threefold, right? We have our day-to-day life that we go about and we, have our things that we have to do.
Right.
This would be a place where we say, okay, wait a second. I'm leaving that for a minute. I'm taking time to check in with myself, right? Where am I internally? Where am I spiritually? And we meet our brothers. Like, where am I with my community? Are we doing what we need? Are we really helping each other out? Are we standing for the right things together? Are we having disputes that maybe we don't need to be having? And then thirdly, people would come here and they would see, it would be meeting with God, right? We're coming up to do this worship. They would bring up this road their Passover sacrifice. This would be the place where they would bring up the water from the Shiloh for the most spiritual and happy celebration during tabernacles. This was the spot. But story doesn't end so well. Right below there, right, you saw the drainage tunnel, the gutter.
Yeah.
And that gutter runs all along this road. That's how we actually discover the road, right? And you saw these pots that I showed you.
Yeah.
So what's happening there? And I also showed you there's a coin on the road. I want to tell you that the most important find, I think, that we found on this road are those pots and that coin. We find a number of them, by the way, and I'm going to show you a picture of them. And obviously this is my opinion, but these are those pots that you saw, and this is that coin. Now, this coin, it says in ancient Hebrew, for the freedom of Zion, year 3. Freedom of Zion. What is this talking about? It brings us to year 70. Year 70, Titus comes to Jerusalem underneath Vespasian, and he totally destroys everything. Burns down the temple, and he massacres. Josephus writes that the road itself is flowing with blood. And I want you to imagine that time period, right? Those awful days of Jerusalem. And really, I'll tell you, if you ask Jewish people, they'll say, hey, why was Jerusalem destroyed in year 70? We will say something different. We won't say the Romans came in and destroyed it. We will say because of baseless hatred. That's what that's what we're taught. Why? Josephus writes that there's a road, right? And on one side of the road, you have priests and Levites, and they're working in the temple, and they have money, and there's higher taxes from Rome, live and let live, no big deal. On the other side of the road, there are poor people that hate Rome. They want to be free in Jerusalem. They want to worship how they worship. Politically, they're against those priests and Levites. Religiously, they believe that what's going on in the temple is not the way that God wants. So religiously, they're at ends. Politically, they're at ends. Socioeconomically, they're not even on the same board game, and they're fighting each other. And then within that group, there are zealots that are fighting so hard that they're killing Jewish people that don't believe what they believe.
Wow.
And the Romans come and they say, all right, they're both killing each other. Let's just put up a siege wall. They'll kill each other. We brought Rome here. We couldn't put aside our political and religious differences and helped each other out. If we would have, perhaps Rome would have been here and, like many other cities in Israel, not destroyed Jerusalem. But it got so bad that Titus said, we can't have this in the empire. Let's just burn it all down and we're done. What are these pots? Josephus says that the last Jews of Jerusalem snuck into the gutters under the road. They brought food with them. They brought their coins. They brought their life. They tried, somehow I'm gonna escape the Romans. And it didn't work. The Romans discovered it, broke through the road, killed every last one. This is the last spot where we have Jewish presence in Judea for 2,000 years. And if there's something that I wanna kind of circle back to, it's David. David starts here, right? He writes the bestseller, many of that in this site. But there's something that he does thousands of years ago that changed history. If you look at this map, this is what Israel looks like 3,000 years ago when David comes and makes the first united capital of the people here.
Yeah.
And why does he do that? But if you look at a map, Jerusalem is located in which tribe? None. It's half in Judah and half in Benjamin. He's the first one to create a city that will be neutral. And he does this because he says, no more are we going to be divided. We will have one city. Everyone can come to this city. No matter which tribe you're from, you can't say you don't belong. And if you get really deep, Judah is the son of Leah. Benjamin is the son of Rachel. He's taking the brothers and he's saying, we're not fighting anymore. The cell of Joseph, Benjamin and Joseph versus everyone else. We're not fighting. We are one around this city. His son is going to continue to unite, build the temple, which is called the house of prayer for all nations. And we have to decide, how do we let Jerusalem unite us? Is it through love and through spirituality and through amazing history, right? Or is it through hate? Is it through bad politics? Is it through war? And we have to be the people that say, nope, we are going to allow Jerusalem to unite us through love and through through light. And I guess that's what the original people on this road were doing.
It's such a message to anyone who claims to love and follow Christ, to anyone who worships God, to allow that to be so much bigger than the little things that divide us. Because honestly, over the last 2 or 3 years, particularly in the States, there's been so much division, even in the church. But what a message David left for us, that all are welcome here.
We are uniting. We used to be the followers of that message, right? And preach it to the world. We have to spread unity and love. And it's hard in our day-to-day.
Yeah. One of the reasons that so many people come to Israel and then particularly to Jerusalem, and honestly, it's been on my heart too, is to walk the Via Dolorosa, one of the most sacred places that any believer could walk, literally walking in the footsteps of where Jesus walked as he was about to pay for your sin and for my sin. Michael!
Hi. Good to see you. Welcome to the Old City.
I'm so excited. So where are we, Michael?
So this is the Lion's Gate, and this is the start of probably the most significant part of Jesus' story here in Jerusalem, the Via Dolorosa, the way of suffering. This is the road he walked as he carried his cross to Golgotha.
So as he passed this way, by that point, he's carrying his cross?
Not yet. So this is the traditional start of the path, but I think what's significant here is we walked in right from the area of the Mount of Olives. That would have been where Gethsemane was, where he prayed and he wept to the point of sweating blood and in agony. And then he was tried at Caiaphas' house, and then he was brought over to Pontius Pilate's residence, and we'll see so much of the story there.
One of the things that's surprising to me, Michael, is how close the Mount of Olives is to walking into the Old City.
Yeah, it surprises a lot of people how close everything is. And you can see this is probably the most significant path for Christianity. But today it's just a modern gate. It goes into the Muslim quarter. There's cars coming in and out, goods and services being delivered. So we're gonna take a step back 2,000 years and see the path our Savior walked.
Awesome. Let's go. So where are we now in terms of the footsteps of Jesus, Michael?
Yeah, so we've come off of the Via Dolorosa, that we're on one of the side alleys. This is the spot that many believe was the place where Pontius Pilate was staying when he was in Jerusalem. So when they lead Jesus to Pontius Pilate, this is where he would have been, in this courtyard. And this is where the trial of Jesus happened.
Wow. Is this a place where he would have been scourged?
Yeah, so when Pilate, he brings out Jesus and he says, I can't find anything wrong with him. And he gets to the point where he looks at Jesus and he brings him before all the people and says, who do you want us to release? It's the festival of the Jews. Do you want us to release Barabbas or release Jesus? He knew that the Jewish leaders had delivered him over because they were jealous of Jesus. He thought giving them that choice, an obvious criminal versus this man that had done so many healings and miraculous things, he thought they were gonna free him. But they said, crucify him. And then he dresses Jesus up in a purple robe with a crown of thorns, and they whip him 39 times. And they say, Hail, King of the Jews.
They had no idea what they were saying.
You know what I love about this is Jesus says, this is the moment for the Son of Man to be glorified. He doesn't say this is a moment of embarrassment or of shame. He says, no, this is the most glorious thing, the Son of Man coming, not in the way you expected, but coming to give his life as a ransom for many. He says, greater love has no one than this, that he lays down his life for his friend.
It's beautiful. Let's move on.
So now we're leaving the place where Jesus would have been given the cross, and he walked down this road. And you gotta think, it was the preparation day for the Passover. So Jerusalem was filled with people.
Any Jew watching him would have thought he was cursed by God. To me, I see the way that Christ overturned every curse, taken back to the Garden of Eden, and man being told that you're gonna have to till the ground and the thorns. But the very thorns Christ wore almost as part of his glory.
Absolutely.
And you told me they're large.
Yeah, large thorns. And if you go to the Mount of Olives, you can see these trees where the thorns are probably 3 or 4 inches thick. And it's a tree that's indigenous to this region. That's what they would have made the crown of thorns. He walked down this path, understanding that he's the Messiah. Just a week earlier, walking the same way, and people are shouting, Hosanna, blessed are you who come in the name of the Lord. And now a week later, they're coming and they're saying, crucify him, crucify him. And I think one of the things for me as a Jewish believer, when the Jewish people say, may his blood be upon us and on our children, that's a statement that has been taken by so many in the church over thousands of years to promote anti-Semitism, to talk about how Israel and the Jewish people are cursed. So it's got this era of pain. In fact, most of the Jewish people today would look back on that moment and say, wow, we were mocked and taken advantage of in Europe because people said you're Christ killers. And it's a very sad and unfortunate history in the church. And so much of that has been now redeemed today by Christians that are coming here and say, well, no, we love Israel, and we love the Jewish people.
But that's part of the work that you and your wife are part of, to unite Christians and Jewish people.
Yes.
To recognize, what have you seen God do through your ministry?
The Bible talks about a day where all of Israel will be saved. How sad that this is the place where Jesus spent so much of his ministry. He said, I'm called to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. And yet, so many of them rejected him, don't know him, and there's still a veil over the eyes of the Jewish people to this day. Our prayer is, God, would you lift that veil?
Wow.
The same way the veil was torn in two when he died on Golgotha, that veil would be torn and they would see him as he truly is. And the Bible talks about a future day where it says the children of Israel will look upon the one whom they pierced and they will weep bitterly as one weeps for an only son. So we believe that's something God's doing today, but it's something he's also continue to do in the future.
So have you had the privilege of seeing that, of seeing the veil lifted from eyes?
Yes. Just 30 years ago, there may be 500 Jewish believers in Jesus in the country of Israel. Today, that number is 30 to 40,000. So we're seeing many more people come to faith to acknowledge that Jesus not only is the Jewish Messiah, but he's also the Savior. And I think for a lot of people, so for my wife coming to faith, that they thought the most un-Jewish thing you could do is coming to know Jesus. Why? Because so many of the Jewish people suffered under being called Christ killers. So how can you become part of the enemy? But in fact, the most Jewish thing you can do is to accept him as the Messiah, as the anointed one.
Beautiful. One of the things that you said, Michael, that I've never thought of is when I think of Jesus taking that walk, the Via Dolorosa, I don't think it's like crowded with people.
Yeah, I think we always read the Bible imagining these big spaces. The Sea of Galilee is huge. The Mount of Beatitudes is huge, but it's really a very small geographic place. You have to remember these cities had a lot less people in them than there are cities today. So here's the fifth station. Simon picks up the cross. Jesus is so exhausted from carrying the cross on his own that he needs the help of this man who's here, leaves his family to walk with Jesus along the rest of the road.
When I see how far we've walked, he must have lost so much blood. Physically, he had to have been absolutely exhausted. I think sometimes we've become so accustomed to hearing the story that it's only when you actually walk in the footsteps of Jesus that you realize this was a moment where he was glorified, as opposed to we see it as a moment when he was tortured and abandoned. But Christ said this was the moment that he came for.
You can see we're ascending here, right? So imagine he's walking uphill, bearing the cross. Simon's helping him. And he goes to this place where he's crucified between two criminals. You know, they were trying to make this statement that here he is, they were mocking him, and they didn't realize even in the mocking of him, this was actually the moment where love was on display, where the justice of God and the mercy of God come together on the cross. This beautiful moment.
I read something that Calvin wrote in the 16th century where it said that in those days, the person who was crucified in the middle would be seen as the greater offender.
Yes.
That he would be the ringleader, that for those who were passing, going into Jerusalem for Passover, would think that Christ was the worst of them all, which in some ways, as he was about to drink every drop, from the cup of the wrath of God. In some ways it was true. He was taking that all upon himself.
Powerful. When we read about this in the gospel accounts, it's so interesting because Matthew in particular mentions all of these things that happen along the way. Them mocking him, casting lots for his garments.
Yeah.
And we see it's this parallel. If you read through Psalm 22, written by King David, this parallel, and you see that David was actually writing about the messianic prophecies. And how many times does Jesus say, no, this must happen so that the prophecies, the prophets would be fulfilled?
Yeah. I think it's interesting too when I read, like in Isaiah the prophet, when he says, unto us a child is born. It's like he's writing in the moment, not like however many hundreds of years from now. He will be born, but unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given, and the government will be upon his shoulders.
Yeah.
And I think that's what they wanted. They wanted someone who'd come in and throw the Romans over and establish his kingdom. But it's not a kingdom of this world.
No, not at all. And even, he's being the Son of God, he's being tried by Pontius Pilate, and he doesn't utter a word in response. When he's at Caiaphas's house being tried, when he's with Pontius Pilate, he doesn't utter a word other than say, this is who you said I am.
Yeah.
And we know the Apostle Peter writes later on, he continued to entrust his soul to the one who judges justly. Just that like a lamb before its shearers are silenced, the Lamb of God was also silent. He didn't have to defend himself, he didn't have to be defensive. His life wasn't taken from him. He laid his life down for the sins of the world.
We've passed so many people who appear to be on pilgrimage.
Yeah.
That is why they have come here. And there's different sections of the old city.
So it's Christian, Jewish, Muslim, and Armenian.
Yeah, they all identify with story in this, but very different ways.
What I love about Jerusalem is that it's a city where everyone believes in God. They believe in one God.
Yeah.
But they debate what is the nature of that God like? So the Muslims see Allah as God, and the Jewish people see the God of Israel, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. But with Christianity, we believe in the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, but we see him expressed in his son, who lays down his life as a sacrifice for many. And it's this beautiful picture that we see of him being the second Adam, coming to redeem mankind, being that righteous man that so many of the Jewish people aspire to, someone who fulfills the law and the prophets.
This is a long walk.
It's a long walk. And now it's important to remember that this would have been where the walls of the city were at that time. So he would have been walking outside of the walls of the city, crucified outside the camp.
Wow.
Which is this, again, symbolic picture going all the way back to the Israelites in the wilderness, where they would send the sacrificial offering outside the camp.
Right, taking their sins away. It's so interesting. When I was growing up in Scotland, every Easter we sang this song, there is a green hill far away outside the city wall.
Yeah.
And I didn't understand, because now they have different places where they say Christ was crucified. But have the walls changed in terms of where the wall once was and where the wall is now?
Yeah, so the walls have changed several times. So these would have been the second walls during Jesus' time in first century. And now the walls today are completely different. So today, the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, where we're going, they're now inside the city walls, but they would have been outside back then. They put him on a main street. That's typically where they crucified criminals. They put them on the main street because they wanted everyone to see.
Shame is greater.
Yeah, to see the shame, to see, hey, this is a warning of what will happen to you if you also act in a criminal fashion or come against the governing leaders.
I'm reminded of Psalm 34, when David's in this terrible place, having done some things that were just outside of what God would have wanted and cost the lives of many. But then he writes, those who look to him will be radiant with joy. No shadow of shame will touch their faces. And when I contrast that with that understanding of cursed is he who's hung upon a tree, he literally took all of our curses upon himself.
Yeah.
So that we could be free.
Yeah. Beautiful. And he says, when the Son of Man is lifted up, he'll draw all men to himself. And that's the beautiful thing. And so much of Jesus' ministry, he even, he doesn't work mostly with the Gentiles. He's working with the Jewish people.
Yeah.
But this moment of the crucifixion, we see this is the moment where the gospel goes from being good news for the Jewish people, the new covenant for the Jewish people, to being opened up to the nations and the Gentiles. That's so many people that come here on pilgrimages now are coming to remember where Jesus walked and what he did in this moment, in this place.
Tell us where we are, because it feels like we're kind of above ground at the moment.
So here we are, the final kind of stop of the Via Dolorosa. We've come to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre behind us. You see these two blue domes. This is the place where we celebrate and honor the crucifixion and the burial and the resurrection of Jesus. So you can see there's so many tourists that are coming here. This is the end, final stop as they come before they enter the church and see Golgotha, Calvary, and also the place where the first century tomb was found.
So tell me what it was like. I mean, you came here when you were just 20 years old, just a boy. What was it like for you the first time you walked into the Church of the Holy Sepulchre?
Yeah, I think you walk into the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, and just to paint the picture, you're walking into a church shared by dozens of different Orthodox faiths, really four main: Greek Orthodox, Catholic, Russian Orthodox, these different churches. And there's so much celebration. There's statues, there's images, people are kneeling and kissing, and there's incense, and you're smelling it, and it's very, very religious.
Yeah.
And actually, you kind of think this is kind of the thing Jesus came to come against the religious leaders.
Over the tables.
It reminds me of Jesus on the Mount of Transfiguration when he's there with Moses and Elijah, and Peter says, "Hey, let's build an altar, one for you, one for Elijah, one for Moses." And Jesus says, "No. He hears the voice from heaven saying, 'This is my beloved son, worship him.'" And I think that should be our response to something like this. We know that the place is not holy.
Yeah.
It's what he did here that's holy. And now he's been ascended, and we can worship him and remember. And I think when people come here, it's the experience of what he's done for us and not the exact stone that's going to change our lives.
There's the places that everybody pays attention to and bow and kiss. But there's a different place you told me about that nobody pays attention to.
Yeah, so the actual site that they believe was the tomb of Jesus has now been enshrined, and there's long lines to get in.
Yeah.
It could take hours.
Yep.
Very busy, lots of people. But just behind there, in the original rock, there are first century Jewish tombs. There's an empty tomb. This would have been a tomb like Joseph of Arimathea. This rich man hadn't been used before, hewn out into the rock. And it gives you a great picture of this is a place that looks like where they would have laid him.
But I think one of the most significant things you've said, though, Michael, and we're so grateful for you spending this time with us, is don't worship this, worship him.
Yeah, and I think that's the beautiful thing. When I think about Calvary and when I think about the tomb, the empty tomb, it's seeing Jesus, his glory on display as the Messiah. They mocked him, they put a sign, say, "Hail the King of the Jews." But they didn't realize this was actually the moment when heaven and earth came together, where he plundered hell, he conquered death. And this is the God that we worship. And now what I love is all the pilgrims that come from around the world, it's an honor to the God here who said, "Go into all the world, to the ends of the earth." And now they've come back here to worship him.
And you and your wife are part of that. And we just pray God's richest blessing over the work that you do here. And thank you for spending this time with us.
Thank you, it's an honor.
I love it, thank you.